Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Good day to all. Welcome to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University online video session. Today I am in front of you Dr. Ushma A. Bhatt, the Assistant Professor of English over here to teach you the second year BA ENGM English main as well as English subsidiary paper number 20 that is related with short stories and that we are going to discuss right now. So let's start the work. Look, the paper number SYBA ENGM, that is English main 204, English subsidiary 204, and we are going to discuss block 3 unit number 17 over here. In our last session we had already discussed the short story and what is the meaning of the short story, what are the features of the short story, what actually comes into the criteria of short story. Certain things we had already verified and we learnt it and we discussed, and today we are onwards going to focus on the themes of the short story and the particular short story over here, that is A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. It is written by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So let's discuss the short story. Look, this is the author, the writer, the short story writer over here, the Colombian journalist Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Gabriel is known to be the very big name in the 20th century of American literature that you must have to remember, and you are supposed to write the whole answer about the author and the style of the author, because this is the particular story that is genuinely related with the writer of the short story. Generally, it happens that the short story discusses the plot part, or the short story is genuinely about one particular story, but in this particular short story, the writer becomes the important factor because the story represents the writer's biography, writer's ideology, and the story stands over here as if it is the mouthpiece of the writer's psyche. So that's why you need to understand this short story regarding and on with a view to Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Look, this is the picture of the short story which we are going to discuss right now. A very old man with enormous wings. Naturally, human beings do not have wings, but why this is shown over here, it is very much significant. It explores over here, it gives us the attention that we are supposed to think a human being as if he is a fictitious person, as if human being is not a human but an alien. A person who is not of this colloquial world, but he is the person of celestial world. He may be considered a soul, a spirit, an angel, or a supernatural element. In that way, the story gives us the idea about the fictitious part, the imaginative creation, and the, we can say, the magical realism is displayed over here. You guys might have read, when you would have been young, you might have read the short stories or the long descriptive stories of fairies and monsters and going on the unknown land, and where there would be the man and human beings and animals and human beings, animals in the body of the human beings, or the combination of human and animal, like mermaid, and like the person whose upper part is like is of a horse and the down part is like a human being. Certain stories you might have read or you might have studied during your young age. Those stories could be considered the fictional magical stories, the stories of children literature. We can say that there are many children stories, many children literature that could be considered under the fairy tales story, the stories of Grimm world's stories, the stories of world fictitious stories, this kind of short stories which are having too much element regarding the fictitiousness or regarding the imaginary part, that is the main thing over here displayed in this story of a very old man with enormous wings. So let's see that what is in that story that we have to learn. Look, here is some description about the author. As I told you, we have to focus on the author over here because this is the particular story that talks about the author's biography in a story format. That's why we have to focus on the author as well. Gabriel Garcia Marquez was born on 6th March 1927. Basically, this is the 20th century short story in Colombia. And Gabriel Elgio Garcia and Luisa Sanchez Marquez and Iguerian, these were the fellow beings and family members of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He was raised by his maternal grandparents. In December 1936, his father took him and his brother, and since in March 1937 the family went to Barranquilla and then on to Source, where his father started a pharmacy job. So this is merely the ideology and the data regarding Gabriel Garcia Marquez's birth, his parents, what had happened and how he had created his career as an author or as a person of Colombia or as a journalist or as a short story writer. That you must have to mention in your beginning part of the answer. He was a Colombian novelist, look, and short story writer, screenwriter and journalist of 20th century. So naturally we can come to understand over here that he is a man of short story. Still he is very much interested in novels as well, and as he is the person of Colombia, we can understand that he is the person of United States of America. So he is the person, one of the persons of American literature. There are 3 actual stories which he had written during his career, but they had become very much popular, and that is why they are mentioned over here. Of course there are many more short stories, but these 3 are in the center. Why? Because they are very popular. As for example, The Autumn of the Patriarch, The Fragrance of Guava and The General and His Labyrinth. These are the 3 short stories which are famous. But we are going to focus on a very old man with enormous wings, big wings, that we have to study right now. Look, the summary is written over here in front of you in this PowerPoint presentation. So we are supposed to study the summary. The summary is the actual story of the short story. Actually, we can discuss the story without reading the summary also. As for example, there are 2 main characters in this short story, Pelayo and his wife, and both this Lysandra, they were the husband and wife. And at that time when they had seen that very old man who had come over there in their home, he was having enormous big wings. That is the actual story of this data. Beginning 3rd day of rain, Pelayo killed many crabs. Because of the newborn child, it was sick. Sea and sky were with gloomy, morose atmosphere. Pelayo came back after throwing away the crabs. He saw the very old man with enormous wings lying upside down in the mud. Pelayo called his wife, looked at the fallen body with a mute sensibility. He seems to be the rag picker, and a few faded hairs left on his bald skull and very few teeth in his mouth. He a lonely castaway. The old woman advised them that he is an angel and he would have come for the child. So actually what happens, when Pelayo was in his home and he was with his wife was Lysandra, and Pelayo and Lysandra were taking care of their newly born child who was having fever. And all these three people, they were in the beginning of the short story, they were found in their home, and Pelayo was killing the crabs. Why? Because there was rain for 3 days. There was rain in their village, and due to heavy rain, the crabs were coming in their bedroom, and they were very much worried about their newborn child, and to save their child from the crabs, they were, husband and wife both, Pelayo and Lysandra, both were killing the crabs, and they were throwing out the crabs. And at that time, at the same time, when they were very busy in this activity of killing the crabs and throwing out the crabs, they had seen one big wing in the courtyard, and afterwards they came to see that there are two big wings, enormous big large wings, and there is one old fellow who is sitting there in that courtyard. And that old fellow, he did not look like a human being. Mind well, why there is a problem, why there is a short story, and why there is a sudden twist in this short story. The interesting part is that the person who is the old man, who had big wings, who had large big wings, he did not look like a human being. He looked like an angel, or he looked like a supernatural element, or he looked like the big bird, or he seemed to be looking like an alien. So it shows that he did not look like the regular general human being, common human being. He doesn't look to be similarly regular person, but he has some other kinds of features which could be considered a very rare, and that's why the story becomes interesting over here. And there is a magical realism part which is very important to be learnt, that we are going to learn afterwards. Before that, let us see what happens afterwards. When Pelayo and Lysandra both found that this is an old man with enormous big wings, they found that he was sleeping there. They tried to make them aware, they tried to touch him, and they tried to say or talk with him, but he was not speaking the language which Pelayo and Lysandra could understand. He was speaking some dialectic words which were not in a condition to be learnt. And there was one important thing, he seemed to be the rag picker. Look, his whole body and everything that was surrounding him, including the wings, it looked as if he is the rag picker. He is the poor fellow, he is the person who is picking everything on the road. So he might be looking like a roadside fellow, a very wretched, poor roadside fellow. That was his outlook. And his hair, there wasn't any hair on his head, and he was a bald person, and there were no teeth even in his mouth, very little teeth. So it genuinely shows that he is not a human being of a good civilian society, but he seemed to be something like an alien kind. If you had seen this picture, I had kept it over here. Look how he seemed to be. Even if you see that picture, I'll show you another picture also. After this summary, there would be one another picture. Look how he seemed to be like this. Look how his wings were there, and what is on his head. He's the bald fellow, but he had worn some throne-like thing on his head, and he seemed to be quite very weird kind of a person, or very strange kind of a person. He did not seem to be the genuine human being. That is what you can find. So that we shall see afterwards. Before that, we have to see the story part, what happens in the story, the summary part. The old woman advised them that he is an angel and he would have come for the child. Look, even there are superstitions in 1927 in the Society of America. We can see that when this Pelayo and Lysandra, they were not in a condition to recognize this old fellow, this man with enormous wings. They were in a suspicion that whether he is the human being or a supernatural element or a spirit, or what is this. And as they were under suspicion and they were trying to find who he was, at the same time the neighbor woman came there and she guided them and she advised this husband and wife, Pelayo and Lysandra, that he might be on a supernatural element, or he might have come to take your newborn child. In that way she tried to misguide these two fellows, and that is the thing which comes in the story afterwards. What happens in the next plot that we are going to see? Look, his only supernatural virtue was being patient. Now as this man with enormous wings had arrived, people found, Pelayo and Lysandra found that he wasn't speaking what they could understand, and he was continuously sitting silently, and only thing they could understand about him, that was patience. He was keeping too much patience. He was very slight and slow and doing nothing, and silently he was resting. And that is why Pelayo, Lysandra, other fellow beings, other villagers all gathered, and they tried to throw stones towards that human being. Very inhuman thing they had been doing, and they were trying to throw food towards the human beings. You might have seen this scene in the zoos. If you have visited, some of the children who were naughty, they throw stones or they throw food towards the animals who were caged animals. In the same way here, the villagers, they were trying to torture this old man who had enormous wings. He was tortured. Look the point. He was tortured and pinched and harassed by many villagers. They threw food and threw stones towards him. Then what happens in the story? There is another character also which could be considered the fictitious character, and that fictitious character is of one girl who had transformed into the Spider-Man. She was transformed into the spider. Why? Because she was not following her parents' advice, and she was not following her parents' words, and that's why she was cursed by the earth, or she was cursed by the fellow beings, or she was cursed by the god, and that is why she was converted, or she was transformed into the spider. That was the imaginative element which is very much interestingly added by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. You can see that he wanted to make the story very interesting, and much more magical element is boosted in the story, and that's why he had taken this girl character also. Look, there was a carnival festival in the village of Pelayo and Lysandra, and in that village where Pelayo and Lysandra were living, there comes one woman who was converted into the spider, as she was stubborn in following her parents' words. As I told you, she was a human, but she was converted into the spider. As for example, there is a saying that there was one magician. He knows how to create the bird into the human being and the girl into the bird. As for example, you might have heard there is one song in children's stories, Tane chakli banavi do, Tane kagdo banavi do. In that way, this is the element which is displayed over here in Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Gabriel Garcia Marquez wanted to show that the woman was converted into the spider, and the man who had arrived with big wings is not the man, but he is the angel. So he wanted to focus on the human mind, that there is much more supernaturality, much more imaginary element, much more artificiality, much more creativity, and many more things which are not under the control of human beings. There is actually a difference between the reality and the fictionality. That is what is the main focus of his story, that reality is different and artificiality or imaginative element is quite different. That's what he wanted to focus on. He wanted to focus on two main things, the reality and fictional element. Look, now Pelayo and Lysandra, they charged the villagers to see the angel. They had got a beautiful idea that if they keep the angel in one big caged place, and the angel would be a thing to be looked by the human beings outside, they would get the tickets, or they would keep the tickets also, the charges also, and through that charges they would get much more maximum money. She made a lot of money from exhibiting the old man. Look, they became rich due to this. She is a practical woman and had felt dislike towards the old man, and she was relieved when she saw that the old man had vanished. The old man was leaving the home. So actually finally the old man left from the story also. He left over the seaside, over the horizons of the sea. But before that, what happens actually, Lysandra and Pelayo, they kept this old man in one big courtyard, and they kept the tickets 5 cents to see. If you want to see, have a look on that angel, the person who seems to be the angel, then they would have to, the person has to pay 5 cents to see the angel. In that way they had thought to do the marketing, and they had created certain new kind of a business. Through that they can get much more money. So that was a very fruitful idea. It was done by Lysandra. Being a woman, they had certain kinds of ideas to create how much extra money they could create in their daily life and daily schedule. Look, let's see if the picture, look, this is the same picture as I am telling you. Come and see, 5 cents, the angel. Look how the people are standing around that courtyard kind of a place where they can see the angel from the outside area, and they have to pay the charges 5 cents. It is written on the top of that come and see board, the angel. So in that way they had gained a lot of money also, and then afterwards they created the home, and they were quite richer. They became rich due to this activity. Look, there are various themes. Now the story ends over here. As they have gained the money from this angel, the angel, as if he had blessed these two fellows, Pelayo and Lysandra, and then after some days, as they had shifted in their new home and they were living happy life, this angel, without any reason, and he went away from the home of this Pelayo and Lysandra. He went to the courtyard and he started flapping his wings, and he went away into the sky, and then he went to the horizon over the sea. That was the thing, that was the event happened automatically. It wasn't arranged anywhere, or there isn't any other action in the short story also. The last part of the short story shows that the angel had left the home of Pelayo and Lysandra, and that and becomes very much important for us to understand, for you to understand, for the students of literature to understand, because his entry was very much important and significant. In the same way, his exit is also very much important. The magical realism technique, this is the main thing Gabriel Garcia Marquez wanted to show. And the author of the 20th century who used the magical realism technique. Nowadays also, if you know, there are some other authors, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, known to be the great American author of contemporary period of time. She had taken the magical realism in her novels of The Mistress of Spices, The Conch Bearer, and The Children's Story. In the same way, there is magical realism which could be found in Arabian Nights also. There is magical realism which you can see in the fairy tales stories also, the stories of Cinderella and the stories of the Beast, Beauty and the Beast, and the Sleeping Beauty, and the Hansel and Gretel, and Rumpelstiltskin. These were the fairy tales stories which I am telling you. If you read those fairy tale stories, you would ultimately find the magical realism that which is shown in those stories. In the same way, it is shown in this story also. The person who had enormous wings, There isn't any human being who had enormous wings, or there isn't any woman who could be converted into the spider, but this is merely shown over here as if it happens actually in the real life. Actually, it does not happen in the real life, you know that. And that's what author wanted to show, that how this thing happens. The story is a veiled allegory. Look, I was telling you, it is an allegory about the author and his fame. The author could be considered as the man having enormous wings, man who had giant popularity, and those who were throwing food and stones to that old man, they could be considered the reading public, or they could be taken as the people who were in the group of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or the people who were surrounded or who were reading the works of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So we can say that Gabriel Garcia Marquez is in the center, as if he is the old man, and his fame, his popularity, the reading public could be taken as the people who were throwing stones, or the people who were throwing food, or some people who were appreciating him, some who were trying to give 5 cents to see him, to read his books. In that way, this is an allegorical element. So that you are supposed to mention in your answers also. You have to write it. He is known to be the canonical writer. Look, he is known to be the very popular writer. Canonical in the sense, the person who is accepted by the society, by the Roman culture, or by the authentic resources. That's why he is known to be the canonical writer. There are many other themes also over here. Magical realism, an allegory of the old man, as if author himself is the old man. Look, I told you, and the same thing comes over here. The story about the extraordinary creative artist and his relationship with readers and public. That's what we had already discussed, and it comes over here. The certain uncertainty of time and imagination of human mind. Look, the uncertainty of time is very much important. We do not know what would happen on the very next day. There are many situations, many uncertainties in human life. Human life is most uncertain, we can say most unsafe even, and that is what is reflected in this short story. And imagination of human mind. The author, the writer, the short story writer wanted to explore our imaginative power of human mind at its extreme level, when he talked about the person who could be converted or transformed into the spider, or the person who had enormous wings and he could fly. The person can fly and he can go in the sky, or he can come again and he can talk and remain over here on this human world. So these are the extreme imaginations which Gabriel Garcia Marquez wanted to reflect us, he wanted to show us, and that is what is the important element you have to mention in your theme also, the imagination of human mind. And the last part is the supernatural passions. This supernatural patience is very much important, because we can see that from the beginning till the end of the story, the very old man with enormous wings had constantly remained as if he is a docile, submissive fellow who had been suffering, who had been tortured by the human being, and continuously he is following the rules and regulations of the society. Continuously he was thrown, sometimes he was kept in the lock room by Pelayo and Lysandra. They were keeping him in a locked courtyard. Before that, they were keeping him ignored. They were not providing him food or any shelter. Even the people, villagers, they were throwing stones towards him. They were trying to get the information. They wanted to listen to him, whether could he speak or not, and that's why they were throwing big stones in or towards him. So these things are very much important when we see that the old man with enormous wings had continuously shown a static element. He had remained like a North Pole or South Pole, static one, without showing any reaction, without showing any action even or reaction even. He had tried to show the patience at its most. So that is very much dominant thing, and you have to focus it in your answer also. Look, you can see the picture in this slide, that how he had kept in the courtyard with chicken coops, and the human reception of the supernatural element. Look, these are the major important themes. There are two major supernatural events which are mentioned over here, including the arrival of the old man with wings and the girl who was converted into the spider. Look, those two things, as I had been telling you from the first or second slide, that magical realism is very much important in the story. The fictionality is very much important. The imaginary element is displayed by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and how it is displayed, how human reception of the supernatural element is mentioned, these through these two major events that you have to remember. Then there is an important theme of the blurry distinction between natural and supernatural. You can see that there is a natural natural element also, as for example Pelayo and Lysandra, they were having a kid, they were feeding their kid, they were taking care of their small newborn child. That's very natural. And the crabs were coming when there was for 3 days there had been rain in his village, and due to this heavy rain, constantly there was heavy rain, there were crabs, they were coming into the bedroom of this Pelayo and Lysandra. And how they met this old fellow, this old man, they were not in a position to understand him, or they were not able to judge him as if he is a man, or human being, an alien, or a supernatural, or a ghost, or is he an angel. That's why they had taken the advice from that neighbor woman. Even they called one father also, father of the church, his name was Father Gonzaga. So they called him and they asked him that whether do you feel that he is genuinely an angel or not. So these kinds of things are very important. When you are going to mention these things, you have to make a column of two columns in your answer. One column is about natural events and natural activities that happens in the story, and another column should be about supernatural element and supernatural qualities of the story. In that way you have to write the answer in full. Now there is another important thing, no difference between the crabs and angels arrival. Look, there isn't any difference between the crabs and angels. That's what Gabriel Garcia Marquez wanted to say. He wanted to display over here that as the crabs were coming in the room due to heavy rain, in the same way the angel arrived into their life, into the life of Pelayo and Lysandra. And as crabs weren't making any change in their life, in the same way this angel also did not make any change. And that is what is mentioned and showed over here in this story. Both Pelayo and Lysandra caged the old man. The crowd ill-treated him. Look how they had behaved with the old man. You try to understand the this inhuman activity the people had been doing. You can find that it is very inhuman when you try to torture a person, a fellow, a living being. Even he was caged as if he is the wild animal like tiger or lion, and he was caged. And not even only that, but the crowd, the people who were coming to see him, the villagers and the other people who were gathered outside the courtyard, they ill-treated him. They tried to throw the stones to him, and as he was sleeping and he was remaining static, if you know, he was having that supernatural patience, and to check his patience or to torture him, to make him speak something, they throw some things like food also on him, and some nuts and everything. They were trying to do whatever they could do. Even there was a very worst thing that I would like to tell you over here. They had tried to harass him through iron bars. One iron bar which is very tough. Through that they tried to harass him. So this was the thing that had happened in this story, and the old man was very much tortured. Human element, blend of animals, human characteristics, and the old man had been taken as rag picker, sailor, old man, and fallen angel. All these things are taken as if he is a rag picker. People were trying to understand him. They were trying to get the acknowledgement of him, what he is, who he is, why he had come over here. And to understand this character, they thought that he might have been the sailor or he might have been the fallen angel. But actually they were not in a condition to accept the creature as if he is the genuine creature. If they would have taken him as a creature, the person or the creature who is not of the common world, then they wouldn't have tortured him. But they were, you can see the human mind and you can see the phenomena of human being, that they were not in a position to accept what they can see. Acceptance of what you see is very big challenge. That's what Gabriel Garcia Marquez wanted to say, that when you are able to accept the reality, then and then only you will be a human. Otherwise you are a human, but your activities would be inhuman. That's what he wanted to show over here. The features of the story. The story seems to be witty, sad, and with haunting quality. Why? Because they had shown this person who is neither a person nor a human being, not even an angel also, and not even the supernatural element also. That's why there is a thing which could be considered something occult, something regarding the occultism, something which could not be understood easily, and there is much more ambiguous element in this short story. It's a great treat to all the readers and inspires the readers to read and reread. Even you read, or sometimes it happens then that you reread the story, you will get many more new meanings of that short story. Even you can when you are reading it for the second time or for the third time, you will get much more different meanings other than mentioned in the digest or in the self-learning material, and you will come to understand that okay, there may be certain these kind of exclusions also from this story. So rereading is very much important. Pelayo and Lysander decided to lock him. He was treated inhumanly. That is very significant, and that we had already discussed in the 4th or 5th slide, so we don't have to discuss again. The angel's move is very significant as he became the irritant of the home. Look, when they had become rich, Pelayo and Lysander, and they had their own home, and they saw that angel was moving from one room to another room, and sometimes he would have been seen in the courtyard, and sometimes they would find him in the kitchen. So when this Lysander, when she saw that he is moving freely in the home, she felt very much irritant. She did not like his presence, because her selfishness is also seen over here. You can see that how selfishly she had been keeping him as if he is the thing to be seen in the exhibition. And afterwards, as she got the money and she became rich, her selfishness is over, and now she did not like his presence anymore, and she wanted to keep him out of her presence, and she wanted to see that if he would have gone from her home, she would be very happy. So this you can see, it is the extreme height of the selfishness of the human kind, that when they had some benefits, they would grab the things also, they would grab the animal also, they would keep the beast also, and when the things are over, the selfishness is done, and their opportunities and their things which they wanted from that thing, that is done, they would throw out any human being also. That is the ideology mentioned over here by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The angel's move is very significant, as he became the irritant of the home. So that part is also discussed, and now we are supposed to see the most important elements of the story. Humans must interpret events. Most of the humans should see that what happens in the surroundings of themselves. That is what is mentioned over here. Important character of Father Gonzaga, that I have told you in the beginning, that this Pelayo and Lysandra, they had called the father from the church also, and that father was going to see whether is he the right person, is he the genuine alien, or whether he is known to be the person who could be considered the person of magical realism. These kind of things were found, and they were going to be checked by Father Gonzaga. There is an inseparable blend of realistic elements with magical events. The realistic element and the magical element both are gained and both are mutually combined over here in the story, and the story beautifully, the story is represented over here. It is in front of us to study. The ordinary events, myth, magic and phenomena in nature, all these four things are shown over here, and finally the story ends over here. So we shall be in a condition to finish our story. We are going to meet again. Good day to all. Wish you very good luck.